Hello and welcome to Luminar Coffee Break. I'm Angela Andrieux, and today we're going to be talking about how to use Luminar AI as an extension inside of Apple Photos for Mac. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Up on the screen, I have a photo of my cat, Glenn. I use Apple Photos mostly for my iPhone photos, and most of my iPhone photos these days are of my two beautiful rescue cats. I find that it's a lot easier to take pictures of them with my iPhone than it is with my big camera, because every time I pull out the big camera, they tend to turn their not so photogenic side to me. But with my iPhone, I'm able to get up much more close and personal and get shots that I would never be able to get with the big camera because they see it coming and they want no part of it. But the iPhone is completely non-threatening. So I have a ton of pictures of my cats. Let me go back here to the grid so you can see just what I'm looking at. And they're all so stinking cute. Now I can edit them on my iPhone. I can even do some basic edits here in Apple Photos, but if I really want to make them look good, I find that if I take them into Luminar AI, I get much better results. So in order to do that, when you install Luminar AI, you're also going to have to enable the extension in your system preferences. So you're going to go up to the Apple menu, into your system preferences, and over into extensions. Let that pop up, and then choose photo editing here on the left and make sure Luminar AI is checked off. And that will enable the extension inside of Photos for Mac. I'm going to go ahead and close that up. Hello, Jerry. Hello, Joseph. Good to see you guys tonight. All right, so here in Apple Photos, I'm going to want to work on this image here, and I've already processed this one in Luminar AI. So what I'm going to do, and this is pretty cool, you can edit something and then either duplicate it, do a different version, revert it back to the original. I'm going to click on Edit, and up here in the upper left corner, you can see I can do Revert to Original. And this is what it looked like straight out of the camera. Now, there are quite a few options over here I can take advantage of on the right within Apple Photos, but if I want to take this photo to the next level, Luminar AI is the way to go. So I'll go up to the extension menu, which is the circle with the dots, click on that, and choose Luminar AI. What that'll do is launch Luminar AI right inside of Apple Photos. So it's a convenient and easy way to really extend the creativity of what you can do within Apple Photos. We'll give it just a moment here to load, and we'll go ahead and get to work and make some fun edits. If you guys have any questions as we go along, make sure you put them into the chat. And if you're watching the replay later on, make sure you add the comments. I go back in and take a look at those, as does the rest of our team, and we do our best to get all of those questions answered for you. All right, so I have Luminar AI now up on the screen, and it drops me right into the templates interface. So what I want to do is scroll along the top here for this photos. I really like the options we have under Amazing Animals. And for this image, I found that Bokeh Bright does an amazing job. It just softens the look a little bit. So when with the newer iPhones, they have such amazing computational photography in them that everything comes out very, very sharp, sometimes a little over sharp. And then you add other details and enhancements in other programs, and it can get crunchy very fast. With this particular template, it actually softened those lines a little bit. So let's take a look at the before and the after. It brightened it off up, it softened it, and I love where this is headed. I want to make a couple of other small refinements, so I'll click on Edit, and now I have access to all of the editing tools within Luminar AI. So the first thing I want to do is up here towards the top, I want to erase these little bit of crusties from his eyes. He gets those every once in a while, and they don't make for the most photogenic thing, so I'm going to erase those. So get my erase brush and just paint that in right over those little spots. There we go. Click Erase, and then those are going to be gone. And that cleans up the picture and makes it a lot more attractive right off the bat. Now, I also want to do a little bit of work to bring out some detail in his eyes. You'll notice both eyes are differently lit. His eye on the left is in the shadows. The one on the right is getting some natural light from that window over here. You can see even the shape of the window here and the catch light of his eye. So the enhancements I want to do to these two different eyes are going to be different. So I'll use two separate local masks. We'll go to Local Masking, choose Add, Basic. And the first one we want to look at, I'm going to go ahead and just paint in my mask right over this right eye. There we go. And you can see I got a little bit around the edges. I should have made my brush smaller. So what I can do is actually click the eraser brush and come in here and just clean that up a little bit, make a slightly better mask. All right. So for this eye, I definitely want to increase the structure. And I want to increase the contrast. And the contrast I want to increase because the black part of his eye was starting to look, because it had been lightened a little bit, I wanted to darken that back down, make that tone really rich, and then bring out the detail surrounding his eye and the yellow part. So we can turn that off and back on again, and you can see it made actually a pretty big difference. Now we're going to do something similar with the left eye, but I also want to increase the exposure on the left eye. So I'm going to go up to Add and Basic and let that load up. And now this time I'm going to remember to use the bracket key on my keyboard, my left bracket key, to make my brush a little bit smaller. And now I'm going to brush that in. Now you'll see I just made another mistake. I'm still on erase. So what I want to do is go to my ellipses and tell this to invert. And then if I want to check to make sure my mask is where I want it, you can click Show Mask. And now my mask is just on his eye. So now that I have my mask placed correctly, I can go ahead and hide the mask. And I'm going to ever so slightly bring up the exposure and bring up the shadows a little bit. But in doing this, we start to lose a little bit of that contrast. So I do want to add a little bit of contrast. And let's also add a little bit of structure. There we go. I think that's looking pretty good. I might bring up the exposure a tiny bit more. We don't want to make it look like we're trying to make them look like they're lit the same, because they're not. I just wanted to bring out a little bit of extra detail here in his left eye. So that looks pretty good. Now, in looking at this image, because it is an iPhone photo, we have great sharpness on his face. But if you get out here in some of the softer areas, you'll notice that we have some pretty noticeable noise. So let me go ahead and zoom in there and even maybe zoom into 200%. Since we're on video, it'll make it a little easier. Oops, sorry about that. One moment. Make it a little easier to see that noise. So you can see the grain that we have over here in the smoother areas. There's some in the detailed areas as well, but it's not as noticeable or as troubling to me. Hello, German. So glad to see that you're joining us today. And Jerry says, was this photo cropped? No, it was not. That was how I captured it straight out of the camera. That's the beauty of photographing my cats with my iPhone, is I'm able to get in really, really close and get very intimate photos that you would have a really hard time getting with a larger camera. And I love that I can do that with my iPhone. It just like the picture is really great. Yes, it has some imperfections, like we edit it and now we have some noise in here, but we can work with that. So I'm going to go to the denoise tool and I'm going to pull up the luminosity denoise, and we're going to smooth out some of that grain. And we're not going to get rid of it completely because we are working with a small sensor. It's just one of the things we have to deal with. I might have pulled it up a little too high. And we can always go into our advanced settings and work with the boost here a little bit if we need to. I don't want to do too much. I don't think that the noise is all that disturbing, so we'll leave that there. Let me zoom back out. And now this image looks beautiful. Let's take a look at our before and our after. It's, the changes are really subtle, but we brightened the eyes. We lightened up those edges. And if you notice, the tools that are in use because of our template, it did add a vignette, but it added a positive vignette, meaning it lightened the edges instead of darkening them. That's not a technique I use often, but in this instance, I really think it works well for this image. We might even be able to add a little bit more, and it just adds a nice kind of ethereal quality to this and really leads you into his gorgeous, gorgeous eyes. Now that I'm finished with this edit, I can click Save Changes, and that's going to save that image right back in Apple Photos. And once your internet has a chance to do what it does, it'll sync up with your iCloud, and this edited version will be available on all of your Apple devices. So that's one of the really cool things. You can take a picture on your iPhone, it automatically syncs to the Photos for Mac on your computer. And then once you edit on Photos for Mac, it syncs those changes between all of your devices. Now, the one caveat is if you're taking a lot of pictures and you keep a lot of those pictures, you may have to pay for additional iCloud storage. I think it's pretty reasonable for what you get. I've done that, and I love the fact that I have all of my images from my phone available on all my devices. Certainly a personal decision and based on your budget, but it allows you to have that access, which is a lot of fun. All right, well, I think that's really all I have for you guys.